collective dominion had ruled the stars for 11,000 years. They were not one species, but 17. All joined together under a single empire that stretched across 1,000 star systems. In all that time, they had never met a civilization they could not crush. Some they absorbed, some they enslaved. Others they simply erased from existence, leaving nothing behind but dead worlds and forgotten names. Their scouts traveled to every corner of the galaxy, searching for new worlds to claim and new species to judge. Most alien life they found was primitive. Creatures that still lived in caves or swam in oceans without ever looking up at the stars. These were ignored, left to evolve for a few million more years before they became worth noticing. But sometimes the scouts found something different. Sometimes they found species that had learned to build, species that had discovered fire, then metal, then the power hidden inside atoms. These species were dangerous. Not today, perhaps. Not even in 100 years. But given enough time, any thinking creature could become a threat. The Dominion had a simple solution for such species. They eliminated them before they could grow strong. It was a scout ship that first detected the signals coming from a small blue planet in an unremarkable star system. The signals were primitive radio waves, the kind that a developing civilization would broadcast into space without understanding that anyone might be listening. The scout recorded everything and returned home to make its report. The High Synod gathered to review the data. They were the ruling council of the Dominion, 12 ancient beings who had guided their empire for centuries. They sat in a chamber carved from black stone, surrounded by screens that showed them everything the scout had found. The species called themselves humans. They lived on a world they named Earth, the third planet from their yellow sun. They had only discovered powered flight a little over a century ago. Yet they had already split the atom and walked on their moon. They were building machines that could think. They were reaching toward the red planet in their system, preparing to spread beyond their birth world. The Synod ordered their calculation engines to run projections. These machines could predict the future of any species based on their current rate of development. The results made every member of the Synod feel cold fear in their hearts. At their current speed, humans would develop faster than light travel within 200 years. Within 500 years, they would have colonies across dozens of star systems. Within 1,000 years, they would be powerful enough to challenge the Dominion itself. The youngest member of the Synod, a being called Torvax, who had only served for 300 years, suggested they make contact with the humans. Perhaps they could be brought into the Dominion peacefully. Perhaps they could become allies instead of enemies. The eldest member, whose name had been forgotten, even by himself, simply laughed. In 11,000 years, no species had ever joined the Dominion willingly. Why would these humans be any different? And even if they agreed to submit, could such a fast-growing species ever truly be controlled? No, the decision was made without debate. Humanity must be destroyed before they ever learned that the galaxy was filled with other life. They would die in ignorance. Never knowing why the fire came from the sky, the Synod ordered the assembly of a purification armada. 4,000 warships gathered from across the empire, each one powerful enough to burn a continent to ash. It was far more force than necessary for a species that had never left their own planet. But the Dominion had not survived for 11,000 years by taking chances. Supreme Commander Vexillar was chosen to lead the Armada. He was a veteran of 37 campaigns, and had personally overseen the extinction of 2 species that had dared to resist the Dominion's will. He accepted the mission with something close to boredom. This would not be a war. It would be an extermination, quick and efficient, finished before the humans even understood what was happening. The Armada departed from the Dominion's core systems and began the long journey to Earth. They moved through hyperspace, crossing distances that would take light itself thousands of years to travel. Vexillar used the time to study everything the scouts had gathered about humanity, their history, their weapons, their strange, violent nature. He found them fascinating in a way he had not expected. Most species the Dominion encountered were unified under single governments by the time they reached for the stars. Humans were different. They fought among themselves constantly. They divided themselves by the color of their skin, the land where they were born, the gods they chose to worship. They had created weapons capable of destroying their own world and had come close to using them more than once. And yet they had also created music and art and stories. They had built towering cities and explored the depths of their oceans. They loved and grieved and dreamed of touching the stars. Vexillar felt a moment of something that might have been regret. In another universe, these humans might have become something remarkable. But in this universe, they had been born too close to the Dominion's territory. That single accident of geography had sealed their fate. What Vexillar did not know. What none of the Dominion's scouts had discovered was that humanity had already found something. 30 years before the Armada began its journey, a team of scientists had been drilling through the ice of Europa, one of the frozen moons orbiting the gas giant in their system. They had been searching for signs of primitive life in the ocean beneath the ice. Instead, they had found a ship. It was ancient beyond measure, older than the Dominion itself. Built by a species that had vanished from the universe millions of years ago. The ship was dead, its crew long turned to dust, but its weapon systems remained intact. And humanity, with their endless curiosity and their talent for destruction, had spent 3 decades learning how to make those weapons work. The Dominion Armada was coming to exterminate a primitive species that had never left their own planet. What they would find instead was something very different. They would find a species that had been preparing for exactly this moment. They would find humanity waiting for them, and they would learn, for the first time in 11,000 years, what it meant to be afraid. Admiral Chen Wayland stood on the bridge of the UES, Defiance, and watched the stars through the main view screen. She was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short, and a face marked by decades of service. She had commanded submarines in 3 different oceans during her younger years. She had faced storms that could swallow ships whole and enemies that wanted her dead. None of that had prepared her for this moment. The Defiance was humanity's first true warship. Not a converted cargo vessel or an armed explorer, but a machine built for one purpose: to fight. It had taken 20 years to construct in secret, hidden in a shipyard carved into an asteroid far from Earth. Only a few thousand people in the entire world knew it. Existed, Chen had been chosen too. Command it because she understood something that many military leaders forgot. War was not about glory or honor. War was about survival. And sometimes survival meant being willing to do terrible things. She turned to her tactical officer, a young man named Marcus Webb, who was sweating despite the cold air on the bridge. His screens showed what their long-range sensors had detected. 4,000 alien warships had just appeared at the edge of the solar system, translating out of hyperspace in a flash of exotic radiation. 4,000 ships. Chen let that number settle in her mind. The Dominion had sent enough firepower to destroy Earth 100 times over. They had sent an armada to kill a species they thought had never left its own planet. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The crew of the Defiance numbered 400 souls, scientists and soldiers, engineers and pilots. Every single one of them had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never return home. They had trained for 5 years, running simulation after simulation, preparing for the day when humanity would face its first alien enemy. That day had arrived. Chen opened a channel to the entire ship. Her voice was calm and steady, the voice of a woman who had long ago made peace with death. All hands, this is the Admiral. We have contact with an alien fleet. They are here to destroy our home and everyone we love. They believe we are helpless. They believe we are weak. They are wrong. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today we show them what humanity can do. Today we make them remember us. Whatever happens in the next few hours, know that I am proud to serve with every one of you. Now get to your stations. We have work to do. The channel closed. Around her, the bridge crew moved with purpose, fear pushed aside by training and duty. Chen watched them for a moment, then turned her attention to the approaching armada. The alien ships were spreading into an encirclement pattern. moving to surround the inner solar system before beginning their attack. Their formation was perfect, each vessel exactly where it should be. They had done this before, many times. The destruction of a primitive species was routine for them. Chen's communications officer spoke up. "Admiral, we're picking up transmissions between the alien ships. They're not even trying to encrypt them. I think they don't care if we listen. Put it on speaker." Strange sounds filled the bridge. Clicking and hissing that might have been language. The translation software they had developed worked quickly, converting the alien speech into something humans could understand. ... Target the major population centers first. Leave nothing alive. The High Synod wants this finished within one rotation of their planet. Chen felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. Anger was useful in small doses. Too much of it made you stupid. "Open a channel," she said. "All frequencies. Make sure they hear this." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Chen stepped forward, facing the view screen as if she could see the alien commander through it. "This is Admiral Chen Weyland of the United Earthship Defiance. You have entered sovereign human space without authorization. You have 60 seconds to reverse course and leave this system. This is your only warning." She made a cutting gesture, and the channel closed. On the bridge of the Dominion flagship, Supreme Commander Vexillar received the transmission and could not believe what he was hearing. A single ship. The humans had sent a single ship to face his armada. And that ship was demanding that he retreat. He ordered the message replayed for his bridge crew. They listened to the human female's words, and then they laughed. Some of them laughed so hard they could barely stand. A junior officer made a joke about keeping the human skull as a trophy. Vexillar allowed himself a thin smile. He had studied humans. He knew they were aggressive, even foolish in their bravery. But this was something beyond foolishness. This was insanity. He did not bother sending a response. There was nothing to say to creatures who were already dead. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "Destroy that ship first. Let them see how hopeless their situation is before we burn their world." The Armada moved forward. Weapons powered up across 4,000 ships. Targeting systems locked onto the tiny human vessel that dared to stand in their path. On the Defiance, Chen watched the countdown timer on her display. 60 seconds. She had given them 60 seconds. 58 seconds after her warning ended, she gave the order. Fire. The Defiance had only one main weapon. It had been built around the technology salvaged from that ancient ship found beneath Europa's ice. Humanity's scientists did not fully understand how it worked. They only knew what it did. A beam of light shot from the front of the Defiance. It was not hot. It did not burn. It simply touched the nearest Dominion warship, a massive dreadnought called the Voice of Judgment that carried 9,000 soldiers. And then the Voice of Judgment was gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. Every atom of the ship and everyone aboard simply ceased to exist, leaving behind nothing but empty space. On the Dominion flagship, the laughter stopped. Vexillar stared at his tactical display, watching the impossible happen. One of his mightiest vessels had vanished, as if it had never existed. No debris, no radiation, no survivors. For the first time in his long career, Supreme Commander Vexillar felt the cold touch of fear, and the human ship was already moving toward its next target. The weapon had been found 30 years ago, buried beneath 3 kilometers of ice on a frozen moon that orbited Jupiter. The scientists who discovered it had been searching for bacteria. What they found instead changed everything humanity knew about the universe. The ship was ancient. Dating techniques suggested it was at least 50 million years old, perhaps older. The species that built it had no name that humans could discover. They had left behind no records, no messages, no explanation of who they were or where they had gone. All that remained was their ship and the terrible weapon it carried, humanity's greatest minds. Spent years studying that weapon. They learned that it generated a field that broke the fundamental bonds holding matter together. Atoms simply fell apart when exposed to it. Molecules dissolved. Solid objects became nothing at all. It was not destruction in any normal sense. It was erasure. The scientists called it the dissolution field. The military called it God Killer. The politicians called it humanity's only hope. They built the defiance around it now. Admiral Chen watched through the view screen as her ship's weapon fired again. Another Dominion warship vanished, there one moment, and gone the next. She felt no joy at the sight. Each of those ships carried thousands of living beings. Beings with families, with hopes, with fears. The fact that they had come to destroy her world did not make killing them any easier. But she did it anyway. Because the alternative was extinction. The Dominion Armada had fallen into chaos. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation now scattered in every direction, trying to escape the human weapon that defied all their understanding. Their commanders screamed at each other across communication channels, demanding explanations that no one could provide. On the flagship, Supreme Commander Vexillor gripped the edge of his command chair so hard that his claws left marks in the metal. His science officers were babbling nonsense at him. The weapon was impossible, they said. It violated fundamental laws of physics. Nothing could simply erase matter from existence, and yet his ships kept. Disappearing, 10 gone, 2050. The human vessel moved through his fleet like a predator through helpless prey. It was smaller than his escort ships. Its engines were primitive. Its hull was made of simple metals that his weapons should punch through like paper. But every time his gunners fired at it, the human ship had already moved somewhere else. The human commander was not trying to win through firepower alone. She was using tactics. She was using the confusion of his own fleet against him, hiding among his scattered ships so they could not concentrate their fire without. Hitting each other, Vexillor had studied 37 species before destroying them. He had never seen anything like this. All ships, form a defensive sphere around the flagship, he ordered. Concentrate fire on the human vessel. Nothing else matters. 800 ships obeyed. They pulled back from the chaos of the main fleet and surrounded Vexillor's command ship in layers of armor and weapons. When the Defiance came for them, it would face the combined firepower of the Dominion's finest warships. Admiral Chen saw the formation taking shape. She understood what the alien commander was doing. He was sacrificing mobility for raw power, creating a fortress of ships that she could not easily slip past. It was a smart move. It was exactly what she would have done in his position. "Marcus," she said to her tactical officer, "what do you think?" Webb studied his displays. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "They're giving up their biggest advantage. All those ships packed together, they can't maneuver. They're betting everything on one concentrated strike, and we give them what they want. Take us straight in." The bridge went silent. Every officer stared at their admiral. "Ma'am," Webb said, "that's 800 ships, I know. But they're expecting us to be clever. They're expecting us to run, to hide, to pick them off one by one. So we do the opposite. We charge right down their throats and see who blinks first." She looked around at her crew. These people had trusted her with their lives. They deserved to know the truth. This isn't going to be clean. Our shields won't hold against that much firepower. Some of us are going to die. Maybe all of us. But if we break through that formation, if we prove that nothing they do can stop us, then we win something more important than this battle. We win their fear, no one argued. No one asked to be relieved. They simply turned back to their stations and prepared for what was coming. The Defiance accelerated toward the Dominion. Formation Vexillor watched the human ship approach. He could not understand what he was seeing. The human commander was throwing her vessel against 800 warships. It was suicide. It was madness. Unless she knew something, he did not. "Fire," he commanded. "Everything we have. Destroy that ship." 800 warships opened fire at once. Beams of energy and streams of projectiles filled the space between them and the approaching human vessel. The void lit up with colors no human eye had ever seen. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust converged on a single. Target the Defiance's shields lasted 19 seconds. Chen felt the ship shudder as the first enemy rounds punched through and struck the hull. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Damage reports flooded in from every deck. 17 crew members died in the first breach, their section exposed to the vacuum of space. Another 12 died in the second, but the Defiance kept coming, and it kept firing. Enemy ships vanished. One every few seconds, erased from existence by a weapon that cared nothing for shields or armor. The human vessel was bleeding, dying, falling apart around its crew. But it did not stop. It did not retreat. It did not blink. Vex single quotes, Aylar watched his ships disappear. He watched the impossible human vessel tear through his formation like a burning arrow through paper. And for the first time in his entire life, he understood what it meant to face an enemy who was willing. To die for victory, the Dominion had conquered species. For 11,000 years, because those species always surrendered, when the costs of resistance became too high. They calculated their odds and made rational decisions. They chose survival over defiance. Humans, Vexillar realized with growing horror, did not think that way. Humans would burn themselves to ash if it meant burning their enemies with them. The Defiance broke through the formation. 200 Dominion ships had been erased. The human vessel was barely holding together, atmosphere leaking from a dozen wounds, half its weapons destroyed, a third of its crew dead. But it was still fighting, and the Armada was starting to flee. The battle had lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of fire and death, and impossible courage. The Defiance hung in space surrounded by the absence of 1,100 enemy ships. Not wreckage. Not debris. Just empty space where warships had been before the human weapon touched them. Admiral Chen sat in her command chair, one hand pressed against her side where shrapnel had torn through her uniform. The wound was bad. She could feel blood seeping between her fingers with every heartbeat. The ship's medical bay had been destroyed in the 3rd hour of fighting. There was nothing anyone could do for her except watch her slowly die. She did not tell her crew. They had enough to worry about. The Defiance was a ruin. Out of 400 crew members, only 208 remained alive. Entire decks had been exposed to vacuum. The engines were operating at half power. Life support was failing across most of the ship. They had maybe 12 hours before the air ran out, but they were still fighting. Every time an enemy ship came close, the weapon fired, and another vessel vanished. The Dominion fleet had pulled back to a safe distance. They still outnumbered the humans nearly 3,000 to 1. They could still win this battle through sheer weight of numbers. All they had to do was keep attacking until the human ship finally broke apart. Supreme Commander Vexillar knew this. His tactical officers had run the calculations 100 times. Victory was possible, certain, even if he was willing to pay the price. But what would that price be? He stood alone in his private chambers, staring at a holographic display of the battle. 1,100 ships. 1,100 of the Dominion's finest warships. Crewed by the best soldiers in the Empire, armed with weapons that could crack moons. All of them erased by a single vessel from a species that had never been among the stars before. The Dominion had ruled for 11,000 years because they were feared. Every species in the galaxy knew that resisting them meant destruction. That was the foundation of their empire. Not love, not loyalty, but fear. Pure, absolute fear of what the Dominion would do to anyone who defied them. What would happen when word of this battle spread? Vexillar imagined the subject species hearing about it. The Krever, who had surrendered after losing a single colony. The Morthani, who had given up their entire civilization without firing a shot. The Yenth, the Brakari, the Hollow Ones, all the dozens of species who had submitted because they believed resistance was impossible. Would they still believe that, after learning what humanity had done? One ship, one primitive, crude, impossible ship had killed 1,100 Dominion warships and was still fighting, still refusing to surrender, still daring the mightiest empire in the galaxy to come and try again. If Vexillar continued the attack, he would win. He was certain of that. But he might lose another 500 ships, perhaps 1,000, perhaps more. The human weapon showed no signs of weakening, and the human crew showed no signs of giving up. And even if he won, Even if he destroyed the Defiance and burned Earth to ash, would that be the end? The humans had built one ship with this weapon. They could build more. The technology existed now. It was not a secret anymore. Even if Vexillar killed every human on Earth, could he be certain he had found them all? Humanity had been hiding their preparations for 30 years. What else might they have hidden? What if there were colonies the scouts had not found? What if generation ships had already launched, carrying humans and their terrible weapon to distant stars? The Dominion could spend the next 1,000 years hunting down every last human, and they might still miss one. One hidden outpost. One secret laboratory. One survivor with the knowledge to build the weapon again, and then it would start all over. Vexillar's second-in-command entered the chamber. Her name was Kethra, and she had served him for over a century. She was loyal, efficient, and utterly without mercy. The perfect Dominion officer, Supreme Commander, she said. The fleet awaits your orders. Shall we resume the attack? Vexillar did not answer immediately. He was still staring at the holographic display at the tiny human ship surrounded by emptiness. Tell me, Kethra, what do you think of these humans? The question surprised her. They are vermin, Supreme Commander. Clever vermin, but vermin nonetheless. We will crush them. Will we? We have already lost more ships to them than we lost in the last 3 centuries of conquest combined. And they are still fighting. They cannot fight forever. Their ship is dying. We need only wait, and then what? We destroy Earth. We hunt down their colonies. We spend generations making sure every last human is dead. And all the while, every other species in the galaxy watches us struggle against a single enemy. Watches us bleed. Watches us fail to win quickly and cleanly as we always have before. Kethra began to understand. Her face went pale. Subject species would see our weakness. They would see that we can be hurt. That we can be fought. That resistance is not as hopeless as they believed. Vexillar turned away from the display. The humans have already beaten us, Kethra. Not in this battle, perhaps, but in the war that matters. The war for the galaxy's fear. What are you saying, Supreme Commander? I am saying that we cannot win by winning. Every ship we lose proves that the Dominion can be challenged. Every hour this battle continues proves that one species, alone and outnumbered, can stand against us and survive. We lose simply by being here, he made his decision. It felt like cutting off his own limb, but he made it anyway. Order the fleet to withdraw. Kethra stared at him. Withdraw? Supreme Commander, the High Synod, commanded us to destroy the humans. If we retreat, we can claim we found nothing worth conquering. A barren system with primitive inhabitants. Not worth the cost of occupation. The High Synod need never know the truth. But the crew, the other commanders, they will talk. Then we will make sure they do not. Vexillar's voice was cold. Anyone who speaks of what happened here will be silenced. Permanently. This battle will be erased from our records. It will be as if it never happened. Kethra was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. And the humans? What do we do about them? Vexillar looked back at the holographic display one last time. The tiny human ship was still there, battered and broken, but refusing to die. We leave them alone. We stay away from this entire region of space. And we pray to whatever gods our ancestors worship that they never come looking for us. The retreat order spread through the Dominion fleet like a wave. Ship captains stared at their communication officers in disbelief. Retreat. The Dominion did not retreat. The Dominion had never retreated from anything in 11,000 years of conquest, but the orders came directly from Supreme Commander Vexillar himself. One by one, the surviving ships turned away from the inner solar system and made for the hyperspace threshold. Engines that had carried them across half the galaxy now carried them home in defeat. On the bridge of the Defiance, Marcus Webb watched the enemy fleet withdraw. His voice shook when he spoke.
Admiral?
They're leaving. They're actually leaving. Chen did not respond immediately. The pain in her side had spread through her entire body. She could barely see through the gray spots dancing in her vision. But she forced herself to focus. To witness this moment that she had sacrificed everything to create. The alien ships were fleeing. 4,000 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy were running from a single human vessel. She allowed herself a small smile. "Communications," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Open a channel to the enemy flagship." Channel opened. Chen did not know if the alien commander was listening, but she spoke anyway. "This is Admiral Chen Whalen of the United Earth ship Defiance. You came to our home to destroy us. You failed. Remember this day. Remember what one ship and 400 humans did to your mighty Armada? And understand that this is only the beginning." She paused, gathering the last of her strength. "If you ever return, we will be ready. There will be more ships, more weapons, more humans willing to fight and die for our home. You cannot conquer us. You cannot destroy us. We will survive. We will grow stronger. And someday, when you least expect it, we will come for you." The channel closed. Vexillar listened to the human's words in silence. When the transmission ended, he spoke one final message in return. "What are you?" The response came immediately, broadcast on every frequency in the system. "We are humanity. And this is our home." Vexillar did not reply. He simply ordered his ship to join the retreat. The Dominion fleet departed from human space forever. 6 hours later, Admiral Chen Whalen died on the bridge of her ship. Her wounds were too severe, the damage too extensive. She spent her final moments surrounded by her surviving crew, giving orders until she no longer had the strength to speak. Her last command was to ensure that every member of the Defiance received the Medal of Terra, a decoration that had not existed until she created it with her dying breath. It would be given to all who had fought in the battle, living and dead, a recognition of what they had accomplished. 208 crew members survived to receive it. The Defiance limped back to Earth over the following weeks. It could no longer travel at full speed. Half its systems were destroyed. It was a miracle the ship held together at all. When it finally entered orbit around Earth, the entire world watched. People gathered in the streets, staring up at the sky, trying to catch a glimpse of the vessel that had saved them all. Governments that had kept the Defiance secret were forced to acknowledge its existence. The truth could not be hidden any longer. Humanity had fought an alien armada and won. The story spread quickly. Within months, everyone on Earth knew the name of the Defiance and its commander. Admiral Chen became the greatest hero in human history, her face appearing on monuments and memorials across the globe. The crew were treated like legends, each of them a symbol of what humanity could achieve when it stood together. But the greater impact came later. In ways that no one could have predicted, the Dominion tried to hide what had happened. They declared the mission a success, claiming that the human system had been found worthless and abandoned. They silenced anyone who tried to speak the truth. They failed. Secrets have a way of escaping, especially secrets as enormous as this one. Within a year, whispers of the Battle of Seoul began spreading through the subject species of the Dominion. Within 5 years, those whispers became roars. The Krever were the first to rebel. They had been conquered 8,000 years ago, their entire species reduced to servants of the Dominion. But when they learned that a single human ship had driven off an entire armada, something changed inside them. If humans could resist, so could they. The rebellion was crushed, but others followed. The Morthani, the Yenth, the Brakari. One by one, species that had submitted without hope began to fight back. The Dominion, which had seemed invincible for 11,000 years, was suddenly struggling to hold its empire together, and humanity kept growing stronger. They built more ships, better ships. They spread to colonies throughout their system and then beyond, reaching for distant stars with the same determination that had carried them to their moon a century before. The weapon from Europa was refined and improved, installed on vessels that dwarfed the original Defiance. 50 years after the battle, humanity took its seat on the newly formed Galactic Council. The Dominion had fallen, shattered by rebellions it could no longer suppress. In its place was something new, an alliance of free species, working together instead of conquering each other. The human ambassador was a woman named Lin Chen, the great-granddaughter of the admiral who had started it all. She carried her ancestor's name with pride. At the first meeting of the council, the former Dominion representative refused to meet her eyes. His species had ruled the galaxy for 11,000 years. Now they were just one voice among many, stripped of their power and their pride. Lin Chen did not gloat. She did not mock him or remind him of his empire's fall. She simply sat down at the table and prepared to help build something better. That was what humanity did. They fought when they had to. They endured when they had to. And when the fighting was done, they reached out their hands and offered peace. The Defiant still orbited Earth, preserved as a permanent memorial. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it, to touch the hull scarred by alien weapons, stand on the bridge where Admiral Chen had made her final stand. Some of them were human. Many were not. They all came to learn the same lesson, that courage was not about winning. It was about refusing to surrender, even when victory seemed impossible. It was about standing up when everyone expected you to kneel. Admiral Chen had understood that. Her crew had understood it. And now, thanks to their sacrifice, the entire galaxy understood it too. The stars no longer belonged to empires that ruled through fear. They belonged to everyone brave enough to reach for them. And it had all started with one ship, one crew, and the simple human refusal to accept defeat.